Hey human, you're here with me, Abby Teal, and this is The Real Deal with Abby Teal, and I'm chilling with my good friend, Elle. Hey Elle.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks so much for being with me today. We're going to be talking about all things human, and I just wanted to just share a little bit about my friend Elle. So we met last summer.
Yes.
And we were getting ready for it, so that's almost a year ago now. And the way we met is I rocked up into a soap shop. I have a thing for soap. I like all good smelling soaps. And I walked up into this soap selling shop. Oh, that's hard to say.
Yeah.
And Elle was in there, and there were 2 or 3 other teenage girls, and they were all talking to each other. And I had a teenage girl that was new to the community. I was trying to get connected. And I walked in, I was like, hey, look at you. How's it going? And pretty much just joined your conversation with or without permission. And started chatting, and I was like, where do you go to school, and what do you study, and what are your interests? And I know this other person who's going to be new to town, and so how would you feel about having a new friend? I'm going to send her in here. And y'all just became fast friends.
The rest is history.
And the rest is history. So anyway, Elle, you are from where?
I am from St. Michael's High School in Maryland.
Yeah, go St. Michael's, go Saints! Woo! And I recently had an opportunity to go to Elle's senior award ceremony. Senior graduating right here. And it was really exciting and repetitive. And here's why. Because almost every other award was, and the award goes to Elle, and the scholarship is for Elle, and you guessed it, Elle, and the best in the class is Elle. Right, exactly. So you're with me now. I know you're echoing in. So, so you're really an incredible human. Everyone else in the world clearly has acknowledged that.
Yeah.
And so, tell us where you're going. Where you're going after you got all these scholarships. You got to go to school now.
Yeah. I'm going to a community college in Anne Arundel County to study photography and get my photography certificate.
Woo woo! And you already do photography, right?
I do, yes. I have a very small business. I'm not really taking bookings right now, just because I'm trying to graduate high school and stuff. But I do professional wrestling photography, and I'm starting to do. I'm starting to dabble more into portrait photography because I love taking pictures of people in their natural habitats.
See, it's someone else who loves humans, so I'm all excited about that. Well, and it's funny too because once I found out, you're like, I do photography, and I was like, okay, like wildflowers, beaches, what are you into? And she was like, professional wrestling, and I was like, what? I love me some Ted DiBiase.
Yes.
I go way back, and she was like, Ted DiBiase's the best, and Insta friend.
Yes,
just found something in
love
common.
You, Ted.
Love you, Ted. We did bond over some junkyard dogs.
Yes,
because that's good. Anyway, we digress. So, Elle, you're such an impressive person. You've been clearly identified in the community as someone who is important because you're getting all of these accolades and scholarships. What's something that you would say, as a tip for someone who's coming up through the high school years? They're like, I really want to seek my own way. Is it okay for me to just, like what I like? Because let's just admit, nobody looks at you and goes, I bet that chick's into professional wrestling.
Yeah.
But you kind of icon blaster right there.
Yeah.
So what would you say to someone who's a young person who's like, I kind of had a different hobby or something else I'm interested in?
Like what you like. Please don't let anybody tell you that your interests are invalid or anything like that. Just like what you like, because at the end of the day, that's what makes you human, and that's what makes you the kind of person that you are. And you want to be your best self.
Yeah, be your real self, right?
Yes.
Because that's legitimate. One of the things that we were talking about earlier, because we've just kind of been chatting and hanging out, and one of the things that we were talking about, you had actually come out to do EYR, Each Youth Recycles project. Arc Farms, who I partner with and Elle has volunteered with this year, has an Each Youth Recycles program where they build these recycling bins. And Elle, being a gifted artist and in the art program at her school, we're like, come on out, do some art. And while she was out doing her jam, clearly very good at it. We've got pictures on the Eat Youth Recycles website for Art Farms. But in the midst of doing that, we're like, and also, are you comfortable with power tools? This is the reaction we got. No.
No.
This is not the thing I do.
No.
So, in the vein of youth empowerment, say, well, you never know unless you try.
Yeah.
So, we asked Elle, would you just consider helping us with this project that requires some drilling and all this other stuff? And you did it, didn't you?
I did. And I did it once, and I was like, nope, I'm going to go back to my painting.
That's right. You got to do you. You got to be who you are. And it's like funny, too, because I'm like, I think that you could, I like for people to try something, even if it's not something that's already in your wheelhouse, because that's how you find out.
Definitely.
And when we were talking earlier, one of the things that we were saying is that a lot of times people think, I've got to stay over here in my zone and just be around people who are just like me. You were telling me about, like, you had friends on the internet and y'all all had the same interests. And I think you said it was like smiling into an echo void. And, you know, you just like, everyone just says the same thing.
Yeah.
So, but you really had to branch out from there.
Yeah.
Where did you find that you really began to define who you are?
So I feel like middle school, this is like a universal experiment. You stay in elementary school, and then you bump up to middle school. You're going through puberty. You're going through all these changes, and then you're with a bunch of people who haven't completely figured out what they want to be, who they are. So I was very to myself in middle school because I was still meeting a whole bunch of new people, and I was kind of going through this time in my life where I was like, I'm not the same as everyone else around me. A lot of people fit into like this one box. And as I got older and older through elementary school, I was like, I do not fit in this box. And it took me a while to acknowledge that. But I thought everyone else fit into that box, so I didn't really talk to people.
Yeah.
But it took branching out to one friend, and we found out we had one similar interest. And
what was that interest?
The band 21 Pilots,
Come
actually.
On. Everyone's got to like something.
Yeah.
It's like we have nothing else in common. Nothing whatsoever. We don't look alike. We don't sound alike.
Nope.
But we do love us some 21 Pilots.
Yes.
What up? And so just having that one piece, being willing to connect with someone, maybe outside of you're smiling into the echo chamber, that you're talking to someone who's different from you. Let me ask you a question. Did they end up more like you, or did you end up more like them, or did y'all just become...
We are two completely different people. I feel like it's either like one way or the other. Like sometimes you have two people, they share an interest, then they like trade back and forth with their interests, and then they like the exact same things of the exact same person. But with our interests, we kind of grew from them and we grew together. And even though we grew apart, we're still close to this day.
That's really cool.
We look at like our accomplishments. Like at senior awards, I literally texted her and I was like, I'm so proud of you. Like, look at us. We're about to graduate.
That's
like,
so cool.
It's awesome.
So I think that what's the kind of the byline we have here is like, you can be who you are and also know other people in the community who maybe you don't have a whole lot in common with, just that one thing, just your favorite flavor of ice cream. That's the only thing. And you used to work at an ice cream shop.
Yeah.
So I know, like, you know my favorite flavor of ice cream. But it's one of those things where you can kind of bond over one hobby or one interest, but without losing yourself. And in fact, I find that when I'm around people who look different or think different or maybe even behave differently than me, that I become more of myself.
Yes.
I become more. Do you find that?
Yes, definitely. It's like two people can like two separate things, but still help each other branch out into new different things and help people branch out into who they're meant to be and who they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. It's crazy how the world works and how like face-to-face interaction works like that.
Yeah, it does. And that's such a rich depth. It's not always easy though, face-to-face. You were telling me earlier about that you were like up until third grade, really bullied a lot.
Yes.
Can you share a little bit about that?
So I moved to the school that I'm at now in kindergarten, and it was such a switch from being here in being in one place and then being in another place. Much smaller school. One school we had 200 kids, then we had 40.
Yeah.
So much smaller. Everyone kind of knew each other already, and everyone liked very similar things.
So that's what you meant by being in a box, that people either looked like this kind of person who enjoyed these things or this kind of person. They're like camps that, and you either fit and you either looked like the same stuff or you were Elle.
And yeah, it's just my bad. Trying to figure out where I fit at a age where people were so obsessed with groups of everything. And I mean, younger kids, they all stay together as a group, and I just felt like I was the one in the middle. And as I grew up, I learned to embrace that and learned that I didn't have to like something that everyone else liked, as long as I was being true and genuine to myself.
In the third grade. So you're 8, 9 years old, figuring out how to block out the noise and go, right, I'm just going to be me and love my wrestling because I can.
It did start in the third grade.
It did start in the third grade. See, Ted? Influencing everybody.
Yeah.
And there's an age gap here. I think you know that.
Yeah.
But we like the same thing. So that's really powerful, though, because we don't realize, I think, how much at a very young age, we start really kind of saying one of these kids is doing his own thing. One of these kids is not quite the same. We learn that on Sesame Street, right?
Yeah.
But I always try to remind adults when we're working with people, and they're like, oh, well, that person is such and such, and this one's like this. And I go, remember, sorting is a first grade skill. 6-year-olds can do what you're doing. So let's grow up and mature a little bit. Yeah. So congratulations on being third grade, figuring out you. So I'd like to go a little bit deeper, if we can, about this whole question of who you are in the community. One of the things that stands out when you meet someone, you're like, oh, well, I can see from the outside, you must be this kind of person. And in my intro to the podcast, I kind of talk about being blonde and white and female and wrinkly. And we don't talk about the wrinkles, but I work on it. I'm doing my face yoga. But we do have this image that it's the first thing that people see when they see us, right? And you have had experiences with that where you seem like you also don't fit what other people's expectations are. Can you share a little bit about that?
So as I mentioned, I went from a huge school of 200 people to a small school of 40 people, and there were significantly less black kids in that school. So automatically, I was always in elementary school, I was top of the class. I was the smartest one. I had beautiful handwriting. I talked in such a mature way, and people would often say to me, "You're not black enough."
Oh wow,
yeah.
What does that even mean?
Yeah,
You're not black enough.
I feel like people inflict these harmful stereotypes onto black people, as in being ghetto or being loud and being aggressive. And
so because you weren't some icon of a rapper or something that we hear on the radio or television or something like that, or even on social media, that you didn't fit their expectation of you. So you, as who you actually are, was somehow less legitimate.
That's what they made me feel. And as we mentioned before, I was bullied a lot because of that too. That was just another thing that made me different from everyone else. So they decided to pick on that and pick on that and pick on that.
Have you ever been told, because I have girlfriends who have said to me the same thing, I think, that you don't sound like you look?
Yeah.
What have people said?
Yeah, definitely like that. People are saying, I sound white. What does white sound like? What does black sound like?
you'll be telling me what white sound like. No, I'm making a point because there's not an idea or a sound or a language. We've kind of appropriated these sounds. Like we go, oh well, this is what someone is gonna sound like on the television. I have one friend. She applied for dog adoption and she did it all over the phone. And she had spoken to the people and done. And when it was time to meet the dog in person, the dog handler came and said, "Oh, I'm looking for Nicole." And Nicole was like, "I'm right here." And she's like, "Oh, well, I didn't expect you to be." And she goes, "Black. I think the word you're searching for is black."
Yeah.
But it's like as if to say, because you're educated, you've always been smart.
Yeah.
You enunciate clearly, so you've got good elocution.
Yes.
You've been in theater, and somehow that excuses you from who you actually are, or makes you someone you're actually not. How it's just kind of a marvel how we got there in society, that we don't, like you said about those boxes, we don't know what to do when somebody doesn't fit our icon. We don't fit the image that they have of what identity looks like. What else has been your experience as far as like in the community, or either you and your friends, where you've kind of had like, yeah, I don't know if I'm blowing up your idea as you get older, when you blow up those ideas of what I should look like, are you finding that there's more space for you to just kind of be who you are?
I feel as I got older, I mean, when you're young and you're told this one thing your entire life as your brain is developing, it really affects who you are and how you behave. I felt like I kind of just like sunk into a shell. And it made me not really feel comfortable in who I was, because at the bottom line is I'm Black. Like that's who I am. Like that's how I identify first. Like I am a Black person. Like that is me. So for someone to say that to me very young was very hurtful. But as I grew up and I saw like a whole bunch of role models, I was able to escape this very small town that I've been in my entire life and look other places and realize that there are Black people that look just like me, that wear their hair just like me, that talk just like me. It made me realize that, yes, I am Black, and no one is going to invalidate that. Correct. This is who I am, and no one is going to invalidate my identity.
That's right. That's right. And it's so. In fact, we were talking about both of us kind of idolize like the same woman, Queen Latifah.
Yes.
Like love you. That's
Queen Latifah.
I know when people ask me, they're like, "And how do you identify?" And I'm like, "Well, on the inside, I'm somewhere between like Queen Latifah, but a mouth like Wanda Sykes." I'm just saying, like, I don't know if I get to identify that way, but if I get to choose, that's where I'm going. But it's true that people seem to want to put us in a box, and I think that it also limits what is a whole race of humanity, and go, oh, a whole race of humanity has to look like Tupac or whatever, and you go, yeah, but you can also like look like Condoleezza Rice, and and just be fully entirely who you are. And I don't think that does anything to say like this is like a social norm or something, but the norm is you be you.
Yes,
like, you legitimately are Elle.
Yeah.
And a pretty incredible human being.
Thank you.
A huge inspiration. I can't even imagine you being bullied and not having friends, because you were one of the most gregarious and outgoing people.
Thank you so much.
I have ever known. Well, I know that you work a lot with people who are exploring where they are, and because you're in the Gender Student Alliance.
Yeah, the Gender Sexuality Alliance at my school. Yeah,
so one of the things that I know that group really supports is space for people to figure out where they are. And if I put my piece on that, I like to say I am exactly where I am at this point in my story. So I am nearly 50 years old, and I ain't there yet. I got a minute and a half.
Yeah.
So, I'm getting older all the time, and I have to tell you, Al, I know this is hard to believe. I have not arrived. I have not fully developed as a human. I'm still sometimes, and so I know I'm still.
You're still learning things?
I'm learning things, and I am still coming out of some cocoons, some places where I'm just still emerging. And I think what is really cool is that if we always have space to be who we are at this point in our story, like you are at a few words in a line on a paragraph, not even at the end of the page, definitely not a chapter, and for sure not at the end in the book, right?
Exactly. I've been told a lot, especially recently, that I am so like mature and so emotionally mature. And I know, like, with certain people, hearing that is kind of like, oh, I'm done growing up. I'm not going to grow up. I'm not going to learn anything. I'm not going to change my opinion on anything. But the truth is, you continue learning your entire life.
Yeah.
So the quicker you realize that, the more open-minded you can be to everything in the world, the more possibilities there are for you in life. And I don't know, like, once I learned that, I've looked at everything in such a positive way.
Yeah, and it is positive too. I love how you share that, because there are a lot of people out there, and friends of mine even, and that who I know from way back, and even recently, that have said that, like, I can't get in with this ideology of people being somewhere in between, from one gender or another, from sexuality or another, or even sexual curiosity. And I think that one of the important things to do is kind of to back up, make space, let people, I think the word you used was explore.
Yeah.
So it's really about like allowing people to like figure it out along the way. And it's funny because some of the teenagers that I would work with years ago, at one point they would say, oh, this is who I am, and I've just nailed that down. And 5 years later, they're a totally different part of their story, and not at all where they were.
No.
But that's the important thing about having, so this GSA, this alliance, allows people to have support, not necessarily to say, I agree with where you're going, or I agree with what you're thinking, but I agree that you are a human who needs to be supported and validated where you are in your journey, so that we don't lose any more lives. There's so many lives lost to suicide and self-harm.
Definitely.
And that's just unnecessary. That's a part of our community that's really failed, because we're afraid of saying, oh, if I am friends with you, or I am aligned with you as a human, or if we share a love of 21 Pilots, that people are going to confuse me and say, oh, that I might get wrapped up in all the other things. If I love the 21 Pilots with you, that I'm going to have to also love professional wrestling. And don't knock till you tried it, but you don't have to align with everything with a person in order to be in a relationship with them.
It's okay to respectfully disagree with someone else's opinions. You don't have to agree with everyone's opinions on life. As long as you like respect each other, that's like the most important thing I've found. I have friends who are complete opposites of me, but we respect each other. We hear each other out on certain things. We always listen to each other, and we are like the bestest friends because our experiences are so different, and we enjoy hearing about each other's experiences. We love talking to each other.
Yeah. You don't have to absolutely agree. And I think that's one of the neat things, is just being able to, as a community, as a person in the community, like, make space to be a human. Help me understand, give us some advice for people who are, like, say, in the community, whether it's a bigger town where you have a lot more maybe diversity just in the community, or even still pockets, small town areas. How can we be more connected with young people? I know that you had said that, like, literally the way that I met Elle was I just put myself in their conversation and was just like, hey, I'm going to be your friend right now.
That was the first thing I was going to say. Like, insert yourself into these conversations. You like my hair? Hey, I like your hair. Hey, thank you. Da-da-da-da-da. That's how conversations get started. And depending on the person, you never lose these people. These can become friends for life.
Yeah.
Just because you shared one interest, just because you liked one thing of theirs. I also suggest like listening to people and hearing people's thoughts about certain things, because if someone's talking about something that they're very passionate about and you're just like, I don't know, picking your nails or on your phone or something else, it comes off as very disgenuine.
Yeah.
And you can't build connections like that. Be an active listener. Actually take time to listen to what they have to say.
Really helps to make eye contact.
Yes. I am terrible at that, but I love making eye contact with you. That's how you create connections. The person who's talking can really feel connected to you. It's like, hey, they care about what I have to say. I think I want to keep them around in my life.
And when someone cares about what you have to say as a young person, what does that do to your world? Does it become less fragile? Do you feel safer?
I feel so much safer. I feel heard. I feel listened to, because being so young, I've heard like my entire life, like your problems are so little, your problems don't matter. When you get older, you're going to have even bigger problems. And it makes
so not encouraging, by the way. That's not helpful.
Not helpful at all. And I felt like, okay, so these are my problems. I can't get them out. I can't talk to anybody about this. What am I going to do?
Okay, we keep having these helicopters go by. So Elle, you were telling me about someone who's really incredibly supportive in your life, and that person is
my mom, my best friend.
Yay, mom! So that's incredible that you're best friends with your mom, because that's not always the case for young people, especially teenagers. So that's really really important, and I'm so glad that you have that connection. What is something that your mom has been able to share with you in your life in the form of support that's really made a difference in your success?
Yeah. When I was struggling with my mental health, she did not let me struggle alone. She immediately
Way to go, mom.
Yeah, she immediately got me help. She was there as help for me. And when I ask like other people, it seems very taboo to ask for help, whether it be financial, mental, physical help in the Black community.
Wow. And that's something that, like, I think sometimes that, especially working in nonprofit world land, I see that there's a lot of funding that goes into marginalized and minority demographics, but there's a trick.
Yeah. So you can make too much money to fall into these marginalized community help programs, or you can make too little money to to even like get enough food on the table sometimes.
So there are these in between spots. It almost seems like you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. There's an idea that all of this funding that goes into minority cultures and demographics, but for those people who are hoofing it, like your family, and that have worked really hard, who are part of the middle class, and who are succeeding just like you are, there's this idea that, like, well, okay, you've made it, or you still qualify because of race, but that hasn't been your experience.
No, not at all.
And even I think you were telling me that when you were like applying for some of the colleges, the scholarships that you've gotten are all merit-based scholarships.
Yes.
Every single one of them are merit-based scholarships.
Yes.
And not based on your FAFSA or your other demographic, socioeconomic qualifications. That leaves you really you are already the people who are working hard.
Yes.
And you have to work that much harder.
Yeah, absolutely. It's insane, this world that we live in.
And then it seems like, I think from what you're saying, that from the mental health perspective, there's also like not support in the Black community for you to be able to say, hey, I need help. And then so like just the social pressure, is that what you're saying?
Yes, definitely.
And so you got the social pressure on here saying, just suck it up, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. So you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and now you no longer qualify for some of the other essential aid. Folks, we've got people who are falling through the cracks, and we look at them and say, oh, you qualify for this, you're getting help because A, B, C, D, and you're not. And these are exactly the kind of people who were like, oh, we laud and praise people who work hard, and no one's working harder, but you still fall through the cracks. I'm really glad that you have your mom who is really aware enough and open to mental health support, even though it's not something that's common in your culture. What would you say to someone, regardless of what community that they most identify with? What would you say about getting mental health support, even if you're like, well, oh, well, I don't have some huge trauma.
Yeah.
Do I, why should I get mental health support? Why do I need counseling? What would you say to someone who's like thinking about it but hasn't crossed that bridge?
Um, from personal experience, it gets very heavy to hold all these things in and not have someone to talk to.
Mm,
I feel that if you haven't had therapy before, and as soon as you go into that first appointment, it's just like a huge weight has lifted off your shoulders already, and you haven't even worked on like coping skills and stuff like
yeah,
that, and how to like cope throughout day to day when these things pop up. No matter the severity of your mental illness or your mental health or how you're feeling, please seek help. Um, Not like just have someone to talk to, because these people are there to listen to you, and
yeah,
it feels so good to have someone to listen to you.
yeah. And in theory, we as a community would reach out and create a real cohesive ecosystem, a bridge of a place of support.
Yeah.
But as we've really isolated a lot, and not just due to COVID, but just from what Ella said, people looking at each other as a different demographic or race or ideology or belief system or sexuality or place in your story, that we've separated so much from one another, and now we're not talking to one another. And so if you're in this place where you're like, man, I don't know if I can wait until someone in the community wakes up enough, opens her eyes and sees me and gets up in my conversation. I need to make it to tomorrow. I need to make it through this week. I would just say reach out. There are people who can help. There are hotlines, and there will be links in this on the website at abbyteal.com for ways to get connected with mental health resources. It doesn't mean that you're crazy. It doesn't
Not at
mean
all.
that you've had a breakdown. It just means that you need some support. And where you are, your community's not able to bring that all around you. Plus, they're experts.
Yes.
They're experts, and you said something about coping skills.
Yeah. Um, Meeting with a therapist, like if you have these thoughts or whatever that keep popping up, the therapist can help you work through these so that it can make each day more manageable. You'll find yourself like, hey, I survived through a week. A
Yeah.
week ago, I wasn't thinking I could survive through the day,
That's
and so on and so forth. You have to get better for yourself. If you don't have anyone else to get better for yourself, because it is so refreshing and it makes you so, so happy.
And I'm so glad you did. And just kudos to your mom. Way to go, mom, for being there and being supportive and seeing you where you were. You're clearly at a great place now. You're doing so well. I applaud you. I am proud of you. I'm excited. And just really celebrate where you've come. It's not a small thing to have worked so hard and to overcome so much. And there are a lot of pieces of this story we have not even scratched the surface of. But really, I'm proud of you. I'm so grateful that you had the help and the support that you did. You have an incredible community and a mom and a family that loves you, that helps you to really move forward, because I cannot imagine not having you in my life. I love you, Elle.
I
You are
love
my
you too,
people.
Abby.
And not just because you love wrestling, but that helps.
Yes, definitely.
Wrestling and Queen Latifah, that is a bond forever. I'm not saying wrestling Queen Latifah, but anyway. So, Elle, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you
I
so much
appreciate
for having
you
me.
being here, and we are going to watch this space. I want to see a year from now, we're going to recap, have you come back and talk to us about where you are, and we're going to be watching out for your art, your photography. Way to be you, girl. Just remember out there in community that it's all about being human. It's all about bridging that gap and talking to someone maybe who looks a little bit different from you, but who is really just another human like you. And we have a lot more in common than what's different from us. Because remember, at the end of the day, building life together is an us together thing. Y'all check us out at abbyteal.com, and we'll see you soon. Join the conversation. Bye-bye.